Hello there. Before the video starts, I wanted to take 5 seconds to say that we're currently about 200 subs away from doing a 10K special, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks a bunch. Welcome back to the lab, everyone. In one of my last Pokemon Stadium videos, I talked about the differences between the first Japanese version of Stadium compared to the sequel that came afterwards. But even though you'd think that the international versions would be the same as Japan's Stadium 2, that's definitely not the case. In fact, there's even some additional game modes that didn't make it overseas. Today, we're going to look at a bunch of these changes, so let's get right into it. The first difference can be seen right when you power on the console, or rather, it can be heard. The intro sound effect is just Pikachu in the international release, but the JP version uses the original sound effect from Stadium Zero. Now that we're at the title screen, of course the language is going to be different, but the English text that tells you to push start says press start in the international version. You can tell the font is slightly different as well. It just kind of feels like an unnecessary change that most people probably wouldn't even notice. I know I didn't. Coming up on some more graphical differences, we have the badge screen that gets displayed after winning a round in one of the tournaments. Nothing crazy or groundbreaking, it's just that the names of the badges were changed to their localized versions. Definitely makes sense. I don't think most of us would be familiar with
the pink badge,
or
the green badge.
if you look closely, you can see some leftover artifacts from the screen being edited between versions. Most notably, you can see what looks like some weird copy-pasting going on with the Volcano badge plaque. Next up are changes that were the result of some controversy concerning two Pokemon. The first of these is Nidoqueen, which we talked about in the Stadium Zero video. Nidoqueen's animation is a bit, well, questionable. The animation was changed in this version to be less suggestive, but honestly, I'm not really sure the new animation is any better. But nonetheless, it was a change that was made. Now, I'm sure you probably could have guessed by now, but the second controversial Pokemon is none other than Jinx. You see, Jinx is based on a type of yokai, which are mythological beings from Japanese folklore. In addition, it also draws inspiration from the Ganguro fashion trends in Japan during the 1990s and 2000s. Unfortunately, this was very poorly perceived as something, well, not related to Japanese folklore. After much scrutiny, the Pokemon Company decided to change Jinx's complexion to be purple, more in line with its psychic typing and less controversial. As such, her appearance in the North American 1.1 version and all European versions of the game now reflect this change going forward. And with that, it's about time to get into some of the gameplay differences. While a lot of the original Game Boy mechanics were corrected in this version of Stadium, there's still a bug with the move substitute. Namely, any moves that drain HP completely fail against a sub. This goes from Mega Drain, Absorb, and Leech Life, which aren't moves that are seen too often in a playthrough of Stadium, so I suppose I can see how this one gets missed. And since we're talking about things that shouldn't be happening, let's take a look at some
Illegal Pokemon.
All of these monsters are used by opponents during the Pika Cup, and there's quite a few that look out of place. But starting with the least surprising of the group, we have the Dragonair that's used by the Fisher in the final match during rounds 1 and 2. Even though Dratini evolves at level 30, you can catch a level 15 Dragonair with the Super Rod in the Safari Zone, but that's only in Yellow version. However, this next set of Pokemon is where things get a little funky. You see, Pokemon Stadium released on April 30th of 1999, with the sequels to the main games, Gold and Silver, releasing in November of that same year. During the period after Stadium was released, but before Gen 2 came out, all of these Pokemon were unobtainable at such a low level. In Red and Blue, there's no way to find a Kangaskhan lower than level 25. However, in the Japanese version of Blue, which is different from our Blue version, there's an NPC in the Route 11 station that'll trade for a Kangaskhan, and it'll be the same level as the Pokemon that you trade him. The only problem is that he wants a Rhydon, and there's no way to get a Rhydon at the correct level to be usable in Pika Cup. Once Gen 2 released, Kangaskhan can be found in Rock Tunnel as low as level 14, and it can also be bred in the daycare to get one even lower. This is the case for a lot of these Pokemon, where Gen 2 gives us the ability to catch them at much lower levels. Poliwhirl can be caught by surfing in Route 22 or Viridian City, and evolved into Poliwrath with a Water Stone. Machoke can be found at level 14 in Rock Tunnel, and traded to get a Machamp. A level 15 Muck can be found in the polluted waters of Celadon City, while Pinsir and Scyther are available in the National Park. Golem is a strange one. It's illegal, but only kind of. In that Japanese version of Blue, there's an NPC who will trade for a Graveler, and just like the Kangaskhan trade, it'll be the same level as the Pokemon you trade him. This guy wants a Kadabra, meaning you'd have to go to Route 8 in Gold and Silver to catch a Kadabra at level 15. The problem is, trading that Kadabra back to Gen 1 will cause it to evolve, and that means the lowest level you can get this Golem is 16, not 15. As for these remaining 5 Pokemon, they're outright illegal. There's no method to obtain any of these Pokemon at their listed levels, excluding any type of glitches, of course. While we're on the topic of illegal Pokemon, we need to take another look at the Pika Cup. This time, there's some rental Pokemon that know moves they shouldn't necessarily have. The rental Poliwrath comes with Double Slap, the Cloyster has Aurora Beam and Clamp, while the Gyarados knows Bite and Leer. These Pokemon can learn these moves, but not at the levels you would normally learn them. They would need to be caught in their evolution form at a ridiculously low level to retain their level 1 moveset. However, this is only the case for the international version, due to some changes in how the rental teams were made. If you've played any of the Stadium games, you'll know that the rental Pokemon leave a lot to be desired. They're just not good. But the interesting thing about this is that many Pokemon had moveset changes between the Japanese and international versions. Seriously, look at this list. In most cases, these changes removed a lot of weaker moves like Cut and Water Gun, but many Pokemon with Self-Destruct and Explosion also had these moves cut as well. One example is the Voltorb in the Petite Cup. In the JP version, Voltorb has Self-Destruct and Sonic Boom, but in the international version, these were removed for Screech and Thunder Wave. Point being that some of the Pokemon get improvements, while others, well, don't. Just take a look at that Pika Cup Gyarados. The original moveset is way better than the one we got overseas. That's most of the minor changes worth noting, so let's talk about those extra game modes. In the US version only, there's an extra feature called the Gallery mode, which lets you take pictures of Pokemon. It's very reminiscent of Pokemon Snap, another game I'm sure many of my viewers are familiar with. This mode lets you use rental Pokemon as well as Pokemon from your Game Boy games to take pictures. There's several different backgrounds to choose from. There's also an option to toggle the Pokemon's name, and while you can move the camera around a bit, it feels like the controls aren't completely fleshed out. After taking pictures and saving them to the gallery, you could take your N64 cartridge to a Pokemon Snap station to have them printed into real photos or stickers. These stations mainly appeared in Blockbuster stores, and as their name implies, you could use them to also print pictures from the Pokemon Snap game as well. There's really not much else to cover on the topic, so let's move on to the Japan exclusive modes. In the international version, there are 4 different cups that the player can enter: the Poké Cup, Petite Cup, Pika Cup, and the Prime Cup. In the Japanese version, only the Petite, Pika, and Prime Cups are the same. The other 3 modes are for the 97, 98, and 99 Cups. Similar to Stadium Zero, these game modes are based on the first big tournaments in Japan, with similar rule sets. This is where Stadium gets its Pick 6, Take 3 format, and some other rules that international players might not be familiar with. The 1997 Cup uses the same rule set as the Poké Cup, but the 97 Cup only has 1 division, while the Poké Cup has 4. Pokemon levels 50 to 55 can enter the tournament, but your team of 3 must be at or under the 155 level cap. Comparing the Master Ball Poké Cup opponents to the 97 Cup shows that they really toned down the difficulty. The Poke Cup uses a lot more gimmicky teams, while the 97 teams are much more competitive. Unlike the 1997 Cup, the tournaments for the 98 and 99 Cups never appear in any form outside of Japan. The rule set for the 98 Cup is strange to say the least. Pokemon levels 1 through 30 can enter, but there's actually no cap for your team's total level, so there's no reason to go with anything but a full team of level 30s. Apparently, some of the opponents didn't get that memo, resulting in half of them having slightly underleveled Pokemon, and just like the 97 Cup, the opponent teams for the 98 Cup use a lot of competitive Pokemon. The best example for this is Round 2. After defeating the youngster in the first battle, the next opponents are the 7 finalists from the real 1998 Cup in Japan, fought in a random order each time. I really like this format of fighting a bunch of strong opponents in a random order, and I wish Stadium did a lot more with that. The last exclusive game mode is the 99 Cup. I think you get the idea by this point, but this mode uses the same rule set as the real 99 Cup. But this is where things get interesting. The level set is for Pokemon levels 1 through 50, almost similar to the 97 Cup, but any Pokemon that made it to the top cut in 1997 are banned. That means no Jolteon, Alakazam, no Tauros, Starmie, and many other incredibly good Mons. This is a really interesting format as it forces you to create teams with Pokemon you might not necessarily use otherwise. Tentacruel, both Nidos, Kadabra, and Persian are some really good choices if you want to try this one out for yourself. Stadium is known for being a fairly difficult game for its time, so it's interesting to see that the original version was even more difficult with tons of competitively viable opponents. It makes the Mewtwo fight at the end just seem even more trivial as a final boss. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for me today. There were a couple things that we didn't cover, like some trivial changes with trainer names and things like that, but I wanted to go over some more highlighted areas. Thank you very much for watching, and remember to hit that subscribe button so we can get to that 10,000 subscriber special. Thanks for stopping by the lab, everyone.
See you next time!